Just outside Wichita, Kansas is the Strataca, Kansas Underground Salt Museum, underground bound.
Hey everybody, it's Mark the Lost Traveler, and we're ready to travel.
The Switcher number 2 was built in 1919 by General Electric, and there was only 3 ever built to be used here at the salt mines. Don't touch the giant salt rocks. Everybody on the tour. Alright, we're getting ready to go 650 feet down. Please touch the salt. Ooh man, that's something else. That is a big piece of salt. Alright, we're now walking under the mines 650 feet down. When the miners would bust through sections to connect each other, they would leave their names and the date that they accomplished that. The names were Bruce Taylor, Lewis Lee, Dan Howe, Brett Ward. (1925). This is how the miners got down into the salt mine. And by using this train. Getting ready to take the Salt Mine Express train. I'm not sure how good we'll see this, but we're in the back of the engine here.
The pieces on the floor used to be the roof. But over a number of years, the salt started sagging away from the compacted mud layer above it and eventually fell. From 1923 to 1983, the miners used a rail system to transport salt from the mine face to the salt skip, where it was hoisted topside. Then, in 1983, they switched to a conveyor belt system. On the left is a car that was used to haul salt and railroad tracks that were abandoned when mining left this area in the 1950s. Everything that comes down in the mine stays in the mine. And if you look at the lit area, you'll see that this is even true of mining trash. Now, we know this area was mined in the 1940s and used as a break area in the 1950s. And we found many name brand products in this trash pile from that time period, and some of which are still around today. There are a couple of things that we noticed here. One, there's a calendar from 1953 on the floor by the rocks on the left. And two, when we found it over by the pillar, the gray trash can, well, it was empty. We consider all these items to be artifacts, which only proves one person's trash is another's treasure. In case you were wondering, trash isn't the only thing miners left underground. And apparently this area was used as a restroom. Oh, no fancy porta pots here. And they weren't very careful with the toilet paper either. And this is one reason we say, don't lick the salt.
Dynamite boxes. Getting ready to walk through the storage facility. Over 1 million square foot of storage, millions of items, 65 employees, 2 shifts. Going through the vault. All this stuff is stored. Even movies are still stored under here. Why not? Angelina Jolie and Salt. Men in Black. These are the movie props that were in the movie. The noisy cricket. Tommy Lee Jones's gun and his glasses. From the movie Superman Returns, a model of the Daily Planet. This was the racing suit worn by Carmen Diaz in Charlie's Angels. Here's some old computers, and they're comparing it to today's stuff with technology. An iPad Nano storage 8,000 megabytes in 2007 cost $230. The IBM Sister 38 computer system storage 64 megabytes in 1979 cost $91,000. In today's dollars, it would be $274,000. And oops, an employee's mistake erased Alaska State's records worth $38 billion. With no backup tapes, employees spent 3 months and $200,000 rescanning paper originals. Look at that computer. Imagine now you can put everything on a little flash drive. This is the original newspaper, April of 1865, the death of a president. The day after President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, this newspaper rolled off the press. For decades, it was stored underground in ideally cool, dry, and dark conditions. And even after 140 years, it's still in remarkably good shape. From the movie Twister, starring Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, there's Dorothy 2. Mr. Freeze costume by Batman and Robin. Agent Smith from The Matrix. And then next to him, Superman costume worn by Dean Cain. Batman costume worn by George Clooney in Batman and Robin. A good gift shop in here after you tour everything. We're going on the dark ride, but so we won't be able to see anything except this is what we're taking.
These are the salt cars that they use. That CSC stands for Carry Salt Company. It would take 2 men about an hour and a half with a shovel and a pig to fill each car, and when they filled the car, they were handed a brass chip. At the end of the day, they could turn those chips in topside for money. In the 1920s, it would have been 50 cents. So a good working day, they made $4. That was good pay in the 1920s. This red car is called the powder car. It always traveled separate from the salt cars, just in case there was a spark that came off the salt car. You wouldn't want your dynamite to go off too early. The dynamite came in the wooden and cardboard boxes from 1920 to 1940. In 1950, we switched over to an AMFO. It's a nitrate pre-mixed with diesel. It comes in that bag. Beauty. In 1983, they stopped using the train tracks to get the salt from the mine face to the hoist. They started using the conveyor belt that we now use today to get the salt from the mine face to the hoist. So to get them into work, they used these old junker trucks, which are very cheap. They bought them topside. Remember, it's going to have to fit into a 5 feet by 4 feet space, so they probably took it apart. That happens to be a 1932 Chevy truck.
Got my little salt bag, and we're going to go digging for some salt. Found a pretty good sized piece right there. Everybody digging in the salt piles. Big salt chunk. This salt scraper was used back in the 1940s. As it would scrape from up there through the loader and then drop into the bucket. And we go out the back end there. In 2006, Mike Rowe from Dirtiest Jobs was here, and this is how he got around in the mine in this vehicle. A very large museum down here of all the mining equipment and trash and just history, and the mine is still very active. A lot of the vehicles, just like this right here, were just parts from other vehicles they made, because you couldn't put this entire vehicle down the shaft, so they would cut it up into 5 and 6 pieces, and then when they came back down here, they would weld it all together. And after they got this vehicle down, it took 600 welding rods to put it back together. Popcorn salt. We're heading back out to the top side and through the shaft that was dug out back in 2004. 1 cubic foot of loose salt weighs about 70 to 80 pounds, but jumps to 135 pounds in its pure crystal form. This block here weighs 6,000 pounds. Here's a map of Hutchinson, and there is the size of the salt mine. This was a great tour here, a lot of information, a lot of history. Everything that was brought down here back in the day stayed down here. They brought nothing back to the top. So there's trash and vehicles and all the mining equipment is here. And the train ride was great. The dark ride was really cool. A lot of the salt here goes up to Chicago and other places in the north to salt their roads. It is time to head 650 feet back to the surface. There's the salt plant there. We were under all of that. Still very active. We were only like a half a mile away from where the men were working. That was a really great tour down there in the salt mines. The museum had a lot of artifacts. Memorabilia from movies was kept down there. A lot of records were kept down there. A lot of the equipment that you saw, or maybe couldn't see because it was too dark, but when they were bringing stuff down, they would cut it all up and bring it down, then weld it back together like I said earlier, but nothing ever came back up. So everything back there from the 30s on up, when they first started doing the mines, stayed down there because I guess they didn't want to contaminate stuff and bring it up and keep bringing it down. So once it was down there, it was down there. And just going through the mines was really cool. And the dark train ride and the regular train ride. And then on the way back up, the lady was saying, hey, lick your fingers, touch your chin, and then lick your tongue again, and you'll taste the salt from being down there for so long. So that was pretty cool. And I actually tasted like a kind of a spicy salt. So that was a good tour. I highly recommend it again. On like most stuff I go to, I highly recommend it. And on that note, traveler out.